Change your heart, change your life, change the planet.
So we've got two hemispheres in the brain, right and left. Right hemisphere is the first one to develop. Left hemisphere develops later. So for children under the age of, say, 18 months, they're primarily living in the right hemisphere, which is why they don't have language. They can't speak yet. The right hemisphere allows you to do all kinds of amazing things, but it doesn't have language. But then around 18 months, the left hemisphere, on average, for most people, starts coming online, starts developing, and this is when language begins, because that's where language exists, that's where rational thinking exists, that's where linear processing exists. So lots of L's over there. The left is about language, logic, and linear processing. And we see that when people develop into adults, there is a tendency to be dominant in one hemisphere over the other. So for some people, that left side will grow more and more and more dominant, and in other people, the left side develops, but the right side remains dominant. And what we now know is that extroverts are left prefrontal dominant. So when we talk about hemispheres, we're really talking about the front part, the prefrontal cortex, which is the human conscious brain. What we consider me, us. That's my prefrontal cortex, the part that's talking to you right now. Extroverts are left dominant. Introverts are right dominant. Now, the right side is deeply connected to the rest of the brain. It's got connections that go all throughout the brain, but the left side doesn't. The left side only connects to the right side. So the left side can only experience the rest of the brain through the right side. So it's like playing telephone. The right side is deeply connected with the emotional parts of the brain. The left side is not. So that's why we can be logical or cold or extroverted, which is not related to being logical or cold, but because they're left dominant and because the emotions are connected to the right side, they're not getting the emotional signals in their dominant hemisphere, so they don't fear the situation. Those signals are being muted. Whereas somebody that is right dominant is going to have those signals right there and readily available, saying, don't speak, don't say it, don't do it, there are consequences. And of course, it doesn't do that with language, it does that with sensation, it does that with emotion. It does that with locking your throat so you can't get the word out. It does that with your knees shaking. It does that with sweating. It does it with all kinds of tactics that are non-language based that try to inhibit you. So another thing about the difference between left and right dominant, the left side is the approach side. The right side is the withdraw side. So introverts, shy people, are heavily right dominant, which is the withdraw. And look at it from a distance. Analyze it from a distance. Once we are in a safe position away from it, we will send information over to the left side for it to analyze. But let's make sure that we are safely away from it before we get into the deep processing. Whereas somebody that's left dominant is going to walk right up to it. Hi, what's your name? I'm going to process you right here, right now, in your face. I don't need to look at you from a distance because I'm not feeling the fear response because that's over there on the right and I don't really listen to that right side. So social sensitivity is also on the right side. So the left side is not really socially aware. So the extrovert isn't really considerate of the social implications of what they're doing or what they're saying. But the right side is heavily socially aware. So you're thinking about all the repercussions and implications and social norms that are at play here. And holy cow, that's a lot to process. And I think I'll just not do anything. So that's where a lot of that comes from. It's just where you tend to be dominant and how you process the world. The right-sided person processes the world in a very, very different way than the left-sided person. And once you can begin to understand that it's not your fault, it's nothing you did, it's no mistake you made somewhere in your development, it's just that you have a brain that is different, not than everybody, but from a large percentage of the population. There are a lot of people just like you. And once you can see that, okay, this is not me, I'm not broken, this is just what my brain does, and there are lots of people like me, then you can start to appreciate that type of brain rather than making yourself wrong or feeling inferior. Drinking and alcohol dampens down the right side of the brain. And because the right side of the brain is the withdrawal center, they also call it the inhibitory center of the brain. The right side is the brakes and the left side is the gas pedal. So if you can tune down the right side of your prefrontal cortex with alcohol, you've just taken your foot off the brakes. And this allows you to be more approach. So that's essentially what alcohol does, and that's the difference between the shy introvert and the outgoing extrovert, is which hemisphere in their brain is dominant. It doesn't mean that the left dominant person doesn't use the right side, and it doesn't mean that the right dominant person doesn't use their left side. It's not a clear, cut and dry. It's just one is a little bit more dominant than the other, and that's all it takes, is a little bit of dominance to make a huge difference. Alcohol is a great way to get rid of that inhibitory response, which is why so many people do it.
Yeah.
But there are other ways to do it as well without alcohol. So you're not trying to predict or prepare this giant conversation. You're only focused on their response to what you did. So you don't have a whole ton of data to work with. You just have one piece.
Yeah.
They either liked it or they didn't like it.